in memory of Edward David Shaul Zichrono Livracha. May Hashem bless Gedalia with health, strength, patience to continue to help and bless him in his personal life.
The blessing word.
Amen. Nicole Sigal Leila Nishmat of her grandmother Sarah. Anonymous in memory of Gerez Bat Frida Zichrono Livracha and Hatzlacha for Eliyahu ben Gerez. Anonymous in honor of Yol Yitzchak Shlomo ben Chaya Sarah and Eliyahu Pinchas ben Chaya Sarah for the Hatzlacha, strength, and healing.
Amen.
Anonymous with gratitude to Hashem and to Gedalia, may Hashem bless him with good health.
Amen. Amen.
And anonymous in honor of Aviram Abraham ben Esther for Parnasa, and anonymous memory of Shalom Chaim ben David Zichrono Livracha, and finally for the immediate refuah shlema of Dvorah Fega bat Reisel Menachem Mendel ben Sarabatu.
Amen. Also, this class is also sponsored by Sharon Levy. And Hashem bless him with everything he does. Okay, we have a good topic today. Today we're going to talk about brain fog. Some people consider it a form of a depression. I don't want to talk about depression too much because people get depressed. So I want to talk about different aspects because I know depression is a very sensitive object. Sometimes, obviously, a woman could have a child and she can get postpartum. So there is normal chemical depressions. What we're talking about is the one where a person wakes up and he focuses on what he doesn't have, and and his diet's terrible, and he doesn't move, and he's taking medication for 20 years, and he creates that situation. We're not talking about a chemical where a person's born, DNA. That's a different kind. But again, Reb Nachman did speak about depression. He says he was depressed at times, but at moments, not as a for the rest of your life concept. He did go through, because we spoke about before, in Chassidut, we do believe in this concept going from higher to lower. That means every single time I get into a new spirit, a new level in spirituality, there is a test there. There is a cloudiness. There is a form of a brain fog, a spiritual, where you don't know what's happening. I don't understand yesterday. I'm waking up, everything's great, I feel great, and next thing you know, I wake up in the morning and I feel something's off. That's the Yetzer Hara to get you to retreat. So we need to understand that. And that's one of the biggest lessons that I think I learned from Reb Nachman's teachings, because I would have great days, and next thing you know, for no reason, I would just wake up like, what's wrong with me today? And I didn't realize it was nothing more but a new level that I was rising. So that's a very important line, because if you interpret that as, wow, I'm doing all this, and this is the way I feel, forget about it. And then you're very quickly to leave. Reb Nachman clearly says in lesson 25 that every single new level that you get to, that means you're going to have this bodedut, where a person starts talking to God, he's going to talk like 1 hour. Everything comes out smooth, like water. And then the next morning, your test is just to go there and say nothing. So if a person thinks he's going to go and speak his bodedut, to talk to God for 1 hour a day, or meditate for 30 minutes a day straight every day, it's probably not going to happen, because you always have to go through cycles and cycles and cycles. So we don't want to give meaning to something that it's not real. So this is a concept. This is what Reb Nachman says, that each level in each world that we exist, there's a new illusion in that new level. It's above us. It's a very, very deep concept to understand. That's Chassidut, Yeridot and Aliyot. New levels, cloudiness, new levels. Just like when the Jews got the Torah, what happens? The 40th day, they thought Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't coming down. That's where they sent with the golden calf. Because that means, what we're trying to say here is we can't stay high forever. It's not a realistic thing. Things can't always be great. It's not a realistic thing. And if you think like that, then you're only going to fall. And this is one of the biggest problems the Jews had. When they got the Torah, they didn't make a tzimtzum. We speak about a lot about a tzimtzum. Tzimtzum means I have to contract my light. So every time I hit a level, that level I enjoy the peak, and then I have to settle down and go for another peak. But I can't go from one peak to another peak to another peak to another peak, because it's not going to happen. And this is believe me, all these lessons I'm giving you guys, there was a lot of pain in these lessons. It didn't come from 17, 18 years, ups and downs, dizziness, confusions, obstacles that I didn't even know. I didn't have the dot to understand why. But the only thing good, I held on. And then Hashem revealed to me why this happened, why that happened, why that happened. That's what I want to reveal to you guys in a different angle. It's not something that I can just teach about. I went through these experiences. Brain fog, it's something that I went through myself when I was 23, 24. Or it's a permanent brain fog. It's funny because now, I have 3 or 4 businesses. I have 4 kids. I'm married. I'm doing classes every day. I have so much more going on today than back then when I was single. I didn't have much going on. I partied, I enjoyed, whatever I did, and I couldn't think straight, and I had no energy. I have 10 times the energy now than I had when I was single, and I had no kids, and I wasn't married, and I had nothing going on. How is that possible? How is that possible when I'm single and I have all this, I can do whatever I want, sleep as much as I want, do whatever I want, and I had absolutely no energy, and here, I have tons of energy, and I have 4 kids and everything, because the energy comes from your soul. And we need to understand what's taking our energy. What's taking our energy? Okay? I need to explain to you guys where the energy. What is evil? Evil is anything in excess. That means food is great, but if I have too much food, it can cause klipot. It can cause a negative hus to attach myself to food. That means if you eat just enough food, you have energy. If you eat too much food, you go to sleep. What is the sleep? Who's taking my energy from me? Klipot. These are these negative forces that are created. Same thing with relations. You have proper relations, wonderful. If too much, it causes excess. So we need to understand that all our problems today are in chasing excess. Excess. That means running and running and running. Where are you running? I don't know. Just running. The excess, the constant running, the rat racing that we would call it today. So Rav Nachman speaks about here, and he's saying here that all the evil forces, which is this cloudiness that we constantly get, unfortunately, if it's not something where you're going on a spiritual high or low, this is a form of excess, where I'm chasing something. For example, if a person has to understand that his job in life is to put whatever effort is to making a living. You have to work, you have to do your due diligence, you can't control the outcome of events. What happens is when you're chasing the outcome of events, and you're worried about things to happen that you have absolutely no control about, that's where the excess and the stress, and all of a sudden a person can put himself sick. That's what Rav Nachman says, that you're never going to get the higher intellect in life if you don't have a control over excesses. That means I can never get to the second level of Torah understanding, or even what does my soul want from me, even my purpose. Everybody has a purpose in this world. If I want to hit a purpose in this world, I'll never understand that purpose unless I get rid of my bad habits. So it's very important. So it's not like when we get rid of our bad habits, okay, we lose weight, we look good. No, you're actually elevating your soul. And then your soul is going to tell you, because what does the Vilna Gaon say? Our soul is like our spiritual GPS. It's going to tell you what your mission is in your life. What happens is, normally we don't look at for ourselves, because we have a Yetzer Hara. We have an inclination. Only when we get smacked in the face and our whole world turns around is usually, that's why so many people have midlife crises today, because they were in the wrong mission. So what does God do? He causes a major car accident in your life to get you to the right place. That's what happens. That's what happened to me. I would have never thought I would be in the rehab world. I would have never thought I would be giving classes. Had nothing to do with this. But what did God do? He made a U-turn in my life, and that U-turn caused me to realize, oh my God, I had this whole hidden potential, and I had all this future ahead of me, and I didn't even realize that was part of me. But that's why you have to suffer, and why you have to embrace suffering and love the suffering, because your soul knows it's good for you. Understand? If you're looking at it as logic, you'll never understand it. Only when you humble yourself and you accept it, does your soul start telling you this is why it happened. So that's why today a lot of people are stuck on trying to understand evil. And guess what? You're not going to understand evil. It's impossible. How could you understand evil? So they're stuck on a lot of trauma in their life. I don't understand why this happened to me. Your job is to overcome it, not to understand it. That's why the big Emunah word is in the world. Emunah! What's Emunah for? To embrace evil. So people say, how can I embrace God after what happened to me? How could you not? Do you understand? The fact that you went through such a traumatic experience, how do you get out of that now? If you don't have some kind of, if a person doesn't work on a spirituality, if a person doesn't work on a bigger why. You understand? And they have the opposite approach. If something happens, it's a time to leave. No, it's a time to go in. Because after the trauma, you get the present. So, unfortunately, anything that's in excess is where all the sorrow begins. Why? Because what happens? Usually a person has a certain blueprint of what his life should have looked like. Okay, you know what? I thought I was going to be married by 25, and now it's 28. Okay, so what does he think? Something's wrong with his life. Correct? His blueprint doesn't match his life. Financially, you're doing much better than your blueprint, your story, etc. So we have to understand, God knows our blueprint. God knows our story. So we have to realize the sorrow is in our expectations. So it's very important to turn our expectations into appreciation. Because once we have sorrow, that's where all the problems begin. Problems begin, Rav Nachman saying here, where in sorrow there's excess. And this is why the klipot attach themselves to a person in a state of despair. When a person's in a state of despair, that's where the illusions come from in his head. If he was focused, and if he was happy, and he fought the darkness, then he has a clear mind. But once you start doubting things, and once you start creating a yush, which is despair, that's where the imagination, and it clogs up your mind. Rav Nachman says in lesson 5, that once you have these fallen fears, when a person doesn't fear God, but he fears something else, that fear will clog your mind, and it won't leave any room for anything new. That's why it's so careful we have to be very careful to break out of states. Otherwise, we have a permanent brain fog, or we have a story that creates our life. Okay? So he's saying here, in the place where one feels sorrow, that's where the klipot overpower a person. And the two ones that are famous is exactly what happened in Noah's flood. First there was immorality, and then there was stealing. I can almost guarantee you, if there's immorality, don't do business with the guy. He's going to rob you, because they're all connected. That means one sin brings to another. Whenever there's immorality, run the other way, because the guy's not going to be satisfied. He's not satisfied with his wife. He's not going to be satisfied with his business partner either. Understand? It's a whole concept. When we see this, we see things completely different. We do business completely different. We pick the people we want completely different. But that's why it's very good to get a guy who's married, get a guy who's content. Because if he's not content here, he's not going to be content there, and he's not going to be content across the board. It just doesn't work like that. So that's why the sorrow, it begins by not having enough, then you fall to sorrow, and then all the klipot start, unfortunately. Okay? So that's one of the major causes of spiritual brain fog, I would say. Or spiritual cloudiness is our klipot, our external things that can only exist when we're chasing excess. There's nothing wrong with a person having tons of money, but what is he giving up his soul for? That means you can have money, you can be successful, but what do you do? Are you praying? Are you learning? What are you doing for your soul? There's nothing wrong with having success. But if the success comes abandoning your soul, then that's a problem. Okay? That's lesson 24. So let's talk about dopamine, serotonin, and cortisol. These are the three chemicals that are running our world. I speak so much about, a person changing his diet and being careful with what you eat, especially, unfortunately in the Jewish world, the obsession over food, it's not just, I tell people, it's not just about the food. It's you're thinking about the food all day long. All day long. What happens when you fast? Oh my God, look how much time I have. I have time on my hands. I have the whole day because I'm spending 23 and a half hours figuring out what I'm going to eat next. That's very frowned upon in Hashem's world. Because you're spending 23 hours in the day figuring out what you're going to eat. And God forbid, if you don't like what you eat, you start complaining to your wife that you didn't get enough food, you didn't get enough. That's very frowned upon in Hashem. And what Rav Nachman says in lesson 47, that Hashem removes his face from the person. He hides himself from the person. So food is something very serious. Rav Nachman has literally, I would say, 60 concepts about food throughout his Torah. Not one, 60 throughout. So now we know the science behind food is that 90% of your serotonin comes from your gut. So happiness could be at the end of your fork. So when a person tells me he's depressed and he's eating terrible food and he's watching TV till he's not sleeping and he's not exercising, then you can't really consider that's a clinical depression. That's just the guy's doing everything to not invest in himself. So that's what I'm talking about that for. So let's talk about these three chemicals. So it's very important if our stomach is lined, if we have proper gut link, if a person doesn't have a proper gut and his gut's working properly, then regular food gets transformed into dopamine, serotonin, etc. For example, tyrosine. A person can get tyrosine from eggs. He can get it from fish. He can get it from yogurt. That gets transformed into dopamine. So if I eat properly and my gut feels great, and I don't have this extra gut leaks and an extra excess, that food will transform into serotonin or into dopamine. So we have tyrosine, and we also have tryptophan. Tryptophan transforms into serotonin. So the bottom line is a person can change his mood by eating properly. So people think, but if a person's gut is not working properly, so what happens? The food, the nutrients cannot be transformed. It cannot be converted into the dopamine or the serotonin. And now, if I have 90% of the food that I eat, my serotonin is in my gut, then whatever I'm eating is affecting the decisions I'm making. That's wonderful for 1 day, 2 days. You want to blame it on Shabbat, wonderful. Blame it on Shabbat. Blame it on the holidays. Whatever you want to do. But what do you do the rest of the week? What is your attitude towards eating? Rav Nachman says, it's not one Torah. I'm going to show you what he says about eating. So we have to understand on a practical level, when I have proper serotonin, right? When I have what is an antidepressant? A serotonin uptake. So when I have proper serotonin is primarily responsible for feeling calm, serenity, optimism, self-confidence. When you feel that everything's all right in the world, it's your serotonin levels that are work properly. But if your serotonin levels are low, you experience depression, anxiety, hopelessness, sleep problems, a negative attitude, and a lack of self-confidence. Again, it's not all diet. But diet could be one of the things that could cause a person to feel sluggish and to feel like the world is black. So I tell people, first exercise and change your diet, and then we'll discuss all your emotional problems. Once you do that, let's see if you still feel that way. And guess what? Magically, all of a sudden people start feeling good. And they start waking up differently. And all of a sudden these problems are not the biggest problems in the world for them. But when you don't feel good, and you don't have the right chemicals, any little problem, it just gets magnified 10 times. Rabbis don't talk about this. They don't talk about it, but we need to talk about this, because I need to talk about the chemical. It's making me wake up in the morning and deciding whether I want to pray or not. Or waking up in the morning deciding if I want to go to class. Or waking up in the morning deciding if I want to do chesed. Another form a person gets serotonin is by helping somebody. When I give somebody a good word, I can get serotonin. I feel good. All of a sudden, I did the exercise in my rehab the other day. I said, guys, don't you feel good when you talk to somebody? Yeah, where's that coming from? What did you take to feel good? You felt good in the soul. So when you speak to someone, you give them a good word, that's a way to get natural serotonin. Another problem that we have is people wake up with no targets. How do you think you get dopamine? When you have a target. When you go for a target, you wake up every day towards a goal, that's natural dopamine. So people wake up with no targets. We're theological beings. We're meant to wake up, okay, what do I have to do today? This is the target today, that's the target today. That creates this natural dopamine. That means when I'm fulfilled and I have a mission, I have no time for stories, I have no time for excuses. I have a problem, I make an adjustment. There's no time for this nonsense. And then sitting down and blaming my mother-in-law, or blaming this person, or blaming that person for my problems. I have a target, I go hit the target. I get natural dopamine. But when there's no targets, and terrible diets, then you want to blame Hashem for everything. So this is the pattern that I'm seeing. So what do I tell people? Listen, I got to get you out of this. I'm not going to justify a person saying that Hashem is weak or Hashem is cruel. I don't justify these stories. That's not my name. My job is to get you out of the state. So serotonin is a calm cure. We can do it by chesed. When we give charity, we can get natural serotonin. That means if a person's not feeling good right now, he should look above himself. He shouldn't be so focused on himself. He should say, you know what, I'm a little and this happens to me all the time. When I'm feeling a little off, I'm thinking, why am I feeling so off? You know what, I'm a little self-absorbed. I'm just thinking of my problems. But I get out of that state really quick. I said, you know what, it's time to give charity. It's time to help this person out. So we can get natural chemicals. We don't need to take medicine. Yes, sometimes you do need to take medicine to get going because you want to balance the right chemicals, but it's not a permanent thing. Medicine without anything else is not good. I mean, medicine without a change of behavior, it's just, it's like the guy comes and tells you, listen, my roots are, every time I put water, all my leaves turn brown. Okay, go to the doctor and he'll spray paint it green for you. But what happens in a month? You have this, it turns brown again. You can't spray paint leaves green and expect that to fix the problem. You have to go do what? You have to go and fix the root. What's the root? Chances are most of the root of our problems is emunah, lack of faith. Rav Nachman says in Lesson 7 that all problems come from a lack of faith. Every single one across the board comes from a lack of faith. That's why when I have a problem, what do? I go. What is my emunah 100% on this? Probably not. Let me go work on the foundation. We don't want to fix broken windows. We want to fix foundations. Imagine the guy, he builds a building, all day long he's fixing broken windows. Instead of fixing the building that's tilted the wrong way and it's causing the crack in the foundation. So Rav Nachman's message is really getting to the root of the cause. That's why when you have a relationship with God, it's much easier to get an answer. But when there's no relationship with God, then where do I get my answers? Who do I turn to? My doctor? Who do I turn to? Who do I turn to? Where would you go to turn to? Who's going to give you 100% advice on something? When you have a relationship with God, God tells you what you need to do, and He tells it to you in your heart. And there's no time to run away. People have a problem. What do? They run away. Who are you running from? Who are you hiding from? Run to God. That means the purpose of the problem is to get you closer to God, not to get you away. So real pain today is a person going away from God. That's real pain. Because you didn't understand the purpose of the issue. What's the purpose? What I went through, that whole purpose of all that crashing and all the disasters that happened to me, my son getting leukemia, a horrible divorce, my business completely getting deregulated, all in 1 month. Why did God do that to me? If it just would have been a little bit of a hit, it wouldn't have woken me up. I needed a massive, massive hit. And it all happened in 1 month. So it was something surreal. It was something beyond that I couldn't understand. So I said, listen, I'm done fighting this anymore. I'm going to start accepting. And when I started accepting, everything changed. Everything changed. Because when you accept, what are you saying? You're saying, I have emunah. I believe there's a bigger why. And then you get your answers. While we're in the problem, we're questioning, we're not accepting, we don't get the answers. Only when we accept. That means through humility, you get your answers. So that's why I keep on telling people, you have to look at your problems completely different. Because you're not getting the opening to get through the line. You're not getting the opening. You're not getting the window of opportunity. You're stuck in the dark room. You need to open up the door and open. That means we have to make the first move, unfortunately. We have to make the first move. So, when a person has low serotonin, for example, he feels hopelessness, he feels weak, he feels something's off. So that could all of a sudden create, remember the Yetzer Hara comes to us when we're not in a state of good, when we're in a state of weakness. So not enough serotonin causes physical and emotional pain. Then a person will start taking painkillers, antidepressants, anti-medicine, etc. Brain fog, etc. You have to understand something. Our job is to grow and give. When we don't grow and give, then our soul is dormant. So it's empty. Where is the emptiness getting filled? Through where? Where else am I going to get filled if I'm empty inside? So according to my theory is my therapy. So if I believe my problem has nothing to do with spirituality, then I'm just going to go with meds, doctors, science, etc. But if I believe my theory is I have a spiritual problem, then I have a completely different therapy. So that way, a person could either go right or left. I believe every single problem of mine is a spiritual problem. And then it's just cloaked as a physical problem. But if you have no idea about, if you're not in touch with your soul, if you don't have anything to do with your spirit, then you think everything is just a clinical problem. And then you'll just go to every doctor without realizing what's the root, what is Hashem telling me here? It's a much refreshing way to realize that, because we know tons of people that are taking anti-anxiety pills for 20 years. That means when they don't trust in Hashem, Of course they're going to be anxious about everything in life. Right? It's like being in a relationship. You don't know if the guy's cheating on you for 20 years. Yeah, over 20 years it's going to do an effect on your brain with excessive stress. Absolutely. Wait, is that a chemical problem, or is that really it's a lack of emunah? Or a lack of trust in Hashem. So if a person doesn't trust in Hashem, then anything that happens in his life, what is he going to do? He's going to worry all day long. So I can't fix the behavior until I change the belief. If you can't, how could I tell a guy stop worrying unless I go into change his belief? So that's why all actions are belief driven. If you want to change an action, change a belief. Otherwise you're wasting your time. So again, my theory determines my therapy. Depending on what I think what I need, that's the therapy I'm going to take. So that's why some people are not getting the right therapy, because their theory is completely wrong on what they need. So now we have to understand that all sicknesses, Rab Nachman, the Baal Shem Tov, he's telling you that all of the problems start from emunah and a problem in the soul. You know, you have to understand, the guy who came up with the 12 steps was an alcoholic atheist. And he said the problem with addiction has nothing to do with a brain disease. It's a problem to do with a person having a hole in his soul. That means it's a spiritual problem. The person needs God in his life. That's why the first step is to give up control and go to a higher power. So they treat it as all addictions as the 12 steps. It's all about not having godliness in your life. So what do we do? What is the first step? It's all about having humility, accepting there's a higher power. That means the addiction got you to recognize, by the way, you need a higher power because you're running your life completely off the wall. So one way or another, that's what Rav Nachman says, when a person gets sick, it's not a bad thing. It's a cleansing. It's a major cleansing in a new direction because the soul is thriving because he sees life completely different. Okay? So that's serotonin. We spoke about serotonin. So we can get serotonin by giving. We can get serotonin by eating properly, etc. Food will give us serotonin. But if we have gut leaks, we're not getting the right serotonin. We have gut leaks in our stomachs. If we're eating these high processed foods, we have gut leaks, and the food does not transform. So yes, you're probably going to have to take an antidepressant because you're not getting the right serotonin. But if you fix your gut leak, then a person can all of a sudden get from food natural serotonin. God didn't create the world where you need medication every time, but unfortunately in America, that's what happens. Second thing, dopamine. Dopamine is the chemical that makes us feel alive. That's the chemical I get dopamine when I hit a goal. That's the chemical where I meet a girl through dating, little by little. But today it's a one-night stand. People want quick dopamine. That's the problem. Or God forbid, a person's watching pornography. What is he getting? Dopamine 500 times a minute. So why the problem with food and these addictions is because they hit the nucleus accumbens in your brain and you become addicted. Tell a guy to go eat 2 potatoes, right? Just eat 2 potatoes. The guy will be so full he won't be able to eat them. But tell him to eat 2 bags of potato chips, he'll eat the 2 bags of potato chips. How's that possible? Because the food industry invests tons and tons of money in hijacking your brain for cravings. They specialize in hijacking your brain so you can start craving anything, whether it's food, whether it's TV, etc. Look at all this binging. I'm binging on this, I'm binging. What do you mean you're binging? You need to watch TV for 25 hours straight? How could that be possible? But that's what they do. They spend money on. But if you ate 2 regular potatoes, you would say, I can't eat this. But 2 bags of potato chips? Without a problem. How's that possible? It's because they're hitting the different level in your brain. So when a person has low levels of dopamine, what happens? He feels unfocused, he feels bored, he all of a sudden, I'm empty, he feels empty. So how is he going to get pleasure? Drugs, etc. Across the board. So if we're not getting natural dopamine through food, through proper goals, I can get dopamine in his bodedut with music. I can get the same high as another guy gets, but I earned it. The other guy didn't earn anything. He just got it very quickly. So what happens when we don't earn dopamine the right way, we become addicted to dopamine. Same thing with sugars, any sugar cravings. What happens? It hits the nucleus accumbens. It hits the same area as your brain as as a drug, as pornography, as food, same area of the reward center of your brain, all three of them hit the same area. So people think, oh, look, I'm religious, I don't have any of these addictions, but the guy, his food that's his addiction. That's his addiction. So let's talk about what Rav Nachman says about eating, okay? Sometimes I do lose customers because I talk about eating, because they don't want to hear the truth, but for Rav Nachman, it's a huge thing. What does he say about eating? So people understand, because clearly 70% of the solution for proper serotonin, proper dopamine is in your gut, is in food. That means we can get it through regular food. Remember, a banana can become tryptophan becomes serotonin. Or nuts become tyrosine, they have tyrosine, that gets transformed into dopamine. So food gets transformed. It's why it's very important for a person to have a proper gut. It's the number one thing. If your gut is working properly, because 90% of your neurons are in your gut. It's a huge thing. You have more neurons in your gut than you have in your brain. I tell people all the time, you have to change your diet. You have to. You're not thinking properly. You're not getting the right brain chemistry. Rav Nachman says that the Egyptians, that all the dinim comes from the concept of, the name Elokim is the name of dinim, right? We know the name Yud Kei Vav Kei represents 26, which expands. The name of dinim causes, Yud Kei Vav Kei represents the name of Chesed. The name of dinim represents the name called Elokim. 3 times the name Elokim represent the word garon, the throat. That means when you're eating, you're getting judged. Eating is a major, major, major thing. That's why whenever a person has a bad dream, what do they tell him to do? They tell him to fast. Why? Because he had could have been an effect that his food he didn't eat properly. He got the bad dream because of the food. Rav Nachman has a whole Torah about how whatever you eat can affect your dreams. That means if I drink this water and I drink this completely in a separate order, I'll have a completely different dream. Because all the food, the vapors go to your brain. So this concept of dinim, garon, is the throat. It's 3 times the name Elokim, which represents judgment. So if I'm not eating properly, unfortunately, instead of having energy, I'll be put to sleep, God forbid. This is what he's saying here. Also, a person, Rav Nachman says, a person's obsession with food, including gluttony, can lead the person to spiritual stagnation. Like I said before. Go do a 1-day fast and say, oh my God, look how much time I have in my hands. I didn't realize I had this time in my hands, because food has become such an addiction. Not just eating the food. Where am I going to go get it? How am I going to go get it? It's just the whole day is thinking about food. And you're wasting your days away. So that's the problem. It's not just the food, it's the attitude. Same thing with the guys that are trying to, God forbid, they're spilling the seed. It's not just the spilling seed. Where am I going to do it? Which girl? The mental energy being wasted, not being used for proper reasons, being used for shtiyot completely, that's the problem. It's a waste of intellect. You understand? Imagine at work, you hire a guy as your CEO, all he cares about, what are you ordering for lunch? I hired you to run the company, not to worry about lunch. But all he cares about, lunch. This is what causes Hashem to remove his face from the person. Okay? Rav Nachman says that gluttony brings a person to a loss of honor and favor, and it will be a good chance that he will get embarrassed. All of a sudden you see a guy eating a lot of food, he gets a big red ketchup stain on his stomach. That wasn't by accident. That was ordained from heaven that he should have gotten embarrassed. That's what Rav Nachman's saying here. So it's our attitude. The Baal Shem Tov says that you want to see, he looked at a person and he said, that person looks like an ox, because his food took over his face. So we have to go, a person has to be focused more on a plant-based diet, because all the confusions Rav Nachman is telling you comes from food. And he even tells us, our sages teach us, that the Gemara Brachot says that the stomach sleeps. What's the problem with the stomach sleeping? If a person's eating too much food, what happens? It takes a long time to digest. And the longer it takes to digest, the more your body's working to digest, the slower your metabolism is, the more likely you're going to be tired. And then that's going to lead you to not wake up in the morning on time. That's going to lead you to being tired. Your husband tells you, honey, can you do this for me? No, I'm tired. I'm exhausted. etc. You see the mood? Mood and food are very related. So I tell people, you don't have a shalom bayit problem, you have a diet problem. Look what you guys are eating. Look what you guys are eating all day long. You can't be in a good mood eating this kind of food. Because sugar jacks you up and you crash. Jacks you up and you crash. So at 5 o'clock you're burnt out. You don't want to talk to anybody. So we want to get energy from food. Isn't Rav Nachman says that our minds develop from the nourishing it receives. When one eats unnecessary food, it mars your sense of judgment. That means your ability to make decisions are based on what you eat. He even says that the function of the mind clearly affects not only decisions, but it puts you into a spiritual stagnation. What does a spiritual stagnation mean? That means I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do in my life. I'm not hitting my goals. I'm supposed to be X, Y, and Z, but I went to sleep spiritually. He even says from Nachman that one's personality is dependent upon a diet. That means it's a good chance to eat more plant-based foods. You become a better person. You become nicer. You become more green, more vibrant, instead of eating other foods. And Rav Nachman said, this is not from he clearly says your personality depends upon your diet. I never went to a vegan restaurant and said, "Efa hummus, where's the hummus?" Screaming at the guy. I never heard a guy saying, "You burnt my kale." I never heard of a guy take back food in a vegan restaurant. Only in these other restaurants, you're complaining that the steak's not good enough, it's not cooked enough, and that's not cooked enough. But I've yet to hear one person in a vegan restaurant say, "You know what? The food's terrible." I've yet to hear one. And guess what? I probably won't hear one. But other people, I don't like the steak, it's not cooked enough. It becomes an obsession about this concept. So yes, it's kosher. Yes, you can have the whole Beit Din, the Orbi, the KM, everybody there, but you're still creating one of the biggest averot. By this attitude of eating is the problem. It's the attitude. It's not just the food. It's the attitude. What are you thinking about? What are you doing with your days? What are you spending time? And that's one of the biggest causes, Rav Nachman says, of brain fog, is this concept. It mars. What does it mean when something mars my sense of judgment? That means I can't make the right judgment decisions. Should I commit to her? Should I not? Should I do this business? I don't know. I'm not getting a clear picture. I'm not getting the right serotonin and dopamine, this is the science of it, and to make the decision, and the right decision. So that's why I tell people, this is not a massage, my classes. This is an operation. You need to cut. If you treat the classes as a massage, you're not going to get much out of it. Nice. It's nice to do. That's the massage. You need to cut. You need to think of my classes as an operation. Because guess what? We all have plenty of time to do other things. I'm not going to do classes just to do them. Just, nice class. There's no advertising on the radio in the classes. There's no money being made. It means the classes are there to change people. Okay, guys, this is what I went through. This is where it says here, go all in. Go all in. But you have to love yourself. That means if a person's willing to, first he has to love himself. Because if a person doesn't love himself, he will never invest in himself. That's the number one thing. Your investment has to be in yourself. So what does our brain need properly to get the right thing? So first we have to change the diet. Exercise, which is completely, when I hear 67% obesity in the Jewish world, 67% obesity, that means there's more people dying because of food than because of famine. That's a big problem. When I hear 67% obesity and no exercising, it's going to kill the wiring of your brain. It's going to kill the wiring of your brain. Even a great book called Spark, he clearly says that exercising 3 to 4 times a day, they did a study, it's equivalent to taking Zoloft. They had the same effect as taking an antidepressant. So again, we want to get this clearly in the first place, because otherwise, what do we need to take all these antidepressants? They destroy our gut. Again, in the beginning, you need to do it sometimes to get the person's level, but it shouldn't be a permanent thing. Okay? So what does our body need? It needs the proper nutrients, it needs exercise, it needs regular healthy, you need to relax, it needs spiritual practice. Again, meaning, when I have goals, I do chesed, that makes me feel good. When I give to somebody, when I'm not about myself, that's where I'm getting this natural dopamine. If you're not doing chesed, and you're just worried about yourself, and you go to tell your doctor, I'm depressed. I have brain fog, and all you care is about your problems, and everybody's out to hurt you. Oh yeah, I see you're depressed. Here you go. Take an antidepressant. But what? How do you fix the problem of me being so self-absorbed? Don't we question that? So when we're self-absorbed, Hashem is sending you the signal you need to get out of you and start giving to the world. It's not just about you. So Hashem puts us in a situation where we feel we're stuck to get us to go give. Because if you're not growing and giving, that's when you're naturally not going to feel the right way. So again, yes, some medicines work, but it's not supposed to be a permanent thing. It's supposed to be temporary. So let's talk about with guys. Unfortunately, with guys, one of the biggest causes of brain fog, unfortunately, this is what I specialize in, is spilling the seed for guys. This is the number one no-no that's causing an effect on a person's brain. It's the number one. Rav Nachman says that a person's mind, we're so careful not to throw away bread, because bread, when you throw away bread, it leads you to poverty, correct? So Rav Nachman relates the bread of crumbs of your mind. So imagine if you throw away bread, you're going to become poor. What happens if you throw crumbs of your mind away? So this is the number one connector. What's the problem with this spilling of the seed? In the science of it, they actually came out with a thing called the NoFap Challenge. I came up with the 40-day challenge. They came up with the NoFap Challenge. NoFap Challenge was not a Jewish concept, showing how people's lives change. Not even Jewish, regular people. There's testimonials of hundreds of people this is what I've been telling people all day long, how people's self-confidence, here's the thing, they had less fatigue, all of a sudden they had much more motivation, they had less mood swings, they had less memory loss, they had less anxiety, they had less sugar cravings, they were able to have more self-confidence. So what are all these things? These are klipot. What are klipot? The klipot is what causes the fatigue, because they suck from the person. What does a klipa do? I'm creating a klipa, which is a negative energy. Where does it go? It just goes in my bank account? Absolutely not. It attaches to me. So when you meet a guy and he's got all these klipot, right? He's confused. He's going here. His mind's everywhere. He gets angry. It's like somebody took over him. It's like somebody took over the person. What happened to you? These are klipot. They're not the person. The person is the soul. But what happens is it's just like a beautiful fruit. Depending on the amount of klipot you put on the person, that's the amount of blockages. So it doesn't allow spirituality to go in. They'll very often say, this is not for me, this Hashem business. It's not for me. I'm not interested. How could you not be interested if your soul comes from God? My soul is created from Hashem. That means I have a portion of Hashem in me. That means naturally I should be running and running to Hashem. But what's causing it? I create these klipot. So this is why what person does the Tikkun HaKlali. The Tikkun HaKlali we speak about so much is because the Tikkun HaKlali has the same numerical value as these klipot. So what does it do? It rectifies them and puts it back into place. That's why the Tikkun HaKlali, I tell people, before we think about brain fog, before we think about this, depression, let's focus on the spiritual healing. Because like I said before, I've seen it enough. I meet thousands of people. I have a drug rehab. It's not just I'm talking from my hip. Depression is connected to this. This leads to this, depression and despair. Why does Rav Nachman say this? Because these klipas, what do? They create this desperation, dysfunctional thinking. And we have to say something. It's not us. I had this problem 20-something years ago, and I was you brought me a rabbi. It's to get this guy away from me. Anything to do with spirituality. The guy giving the classes today looked at the rabbi and says, make sure this guy is completely away from me. I don't want to have anything. And I hear these guys saying the same thing. And I laugh. I'm like, I'm that guy. I'm the guy telling the rabbi to get lost. And I don't want to have anything to do with him. Go take your tefillin and go. I was the guy. When I was throwing parties in South Beach. I'm the guy. So I know what it is. And it's not the person. It's the person's, it's these klipot. So what happens is once I opened up Rabbi Nachman's teachings and I started saying, wow, it's not me. These are exterior things that I can get rid of. I went all in. And then little by little, I started seeing things differently. So the hope is to tell people, I don't care how old you are, you just got to get to work. You got to crack the shell. You got to crack the shell. Maybe you have 100 shells. You got to start cracking. So what does these klipot do? They create this yelala, which means this hopelessness, this depression, looking at the world completely off. And by the way, forget your soul. What does it do? It kills your dopamine receptors, because your body's used to such a hit of dopamine that nothing is good enough for you. The guy that will watch regular that is not enough for him. He has to watch it more. Just like the guy that takes heroin, one shot of heroin is not enough for him. He needs more and more heroin to get that same level of high that he was before. So it kills you. It kills your brain, it kills your soul, and this is why we have such a problem with many guys committing to girls and wanting to get married. And we tell them, listen, your whole life is ahead of you. Your wealth comes from your wife. Don't you want to have kids? Don't you want to have a bigger meaning? This all life is about is just indulgence, and this is what your whole life is about. They couldn't care less, because they don't realize that these klipot make a person completely away from God. So these are the klipot, unfortunately. So again, in excess. How do we get these klipot? Through sex, money, and food. These are the three things that block our heart. That means a person that has any of these three things, that's the number one thing that's going to stop him from getting closer to God. So you have to pick the addiction or Hashem. The addiction or Hashem. And it's very simple. It's not about hugging a tree and saying, I want to go to yoga and become spiritual. That's going to last very little. But to really, really, really get effects, you have to start cutting. Just like an operation. Massages don't work. Massages don't take away tumors. Operations do. And unfortunately, when they have these klipot, they don't just stay. They stay same. And then, unfortunately, our thinking is off. So once we don't have the right spiritual chemicals or the right biological chemicals, our thinking is off. It's like you're making decisions with the wrong thinking. That's the problem. You're making decisions on emotions. You're making decisions on, I don't feel like getting married. I don't feel like doing this. Where's this feeling coming from? That's why okay, you want to take, many people are, guy doesn't want to commit to a girl. He needs more time. To do what? To party? What are you doing? What do you need more time? Are you going to go be a monk for 30 days and get in touch with yourself? I don't have a problem with people having more time. But with what schedule? What are you doing in that time? I need more time to go on a diet. Okay, what are you doing in the 30 days while you're taking the time? What are you doing? Pigging out? Thinking? That's my problem. People going in the wrong direction. So it's not a lack of time. It's a lack of direction that I see today. And that's why this message has to really, you have to scream this. So one good way Rav Nachman says is to fast. When we fast, we're subduing the liver. If a person's angry, we're not going to make Moroccan jokes anymore, because I've been banned. I had too many emails. No more Moroccan jokes. I can't, they banned me already. I had too many emails. Okay, I'll do Moroccan jokes once a week. I made a negotiation. But what happens when a person's eating food, right? The liver has to work at purifying it. So when you fast, you bypass the liver. So the liver gets a break, and the liver is the organ for anger. So one of the best things Rav Nachman says for a person who has an anger problem, go to the mikvah, that humbles you, and fast. Because there's a good chance it has to be connected with food. That's why Rav Nachman says here, lesson 47. See, the good thing about Rav Nachman's teachings, everything has a solution. That means I can tell you, listen, this is where you are, but I have the solution for you to get back. It's not just talking about hopelessness. Every single class that I have, okay, this is the problem, this is the solution. This is the problem, this is the solution. But in order to make lasting change, you must have enough leverage on yourself. First thing is, if you don't invest in yourself, who will? Who's going to do it? Who's going to do it for you? Nobody's going to do it for you. Only you. So Rav Nachman says here, because the food puts you in darkness. That means sometimes people are eating food because they want to hide away from their problems. For example, a guy has no emunah. So when things go wrong for him, his way of dealing with his problem is just eat away the problem, numb the emotions. So what happens? He hides himself from Hashem. Hashem hides himself from him. So what happens? Your face goes down. So what does Ramachan say? Whenever there's a misfortune, God forbid, the rabbis decree they fast. Because when the Jewish people are suffering because of judgments, it's a sign that God hid themselves from them. You understand? God hides himself from us. Why? Because we hide ourselves from him. So when we make the first move, then God all of a sudden comes and approaches the person. So all the person has to do is make a little attempt with chasing money, changing his diet, etc., fixing the Brit, then all of a sudden the doors start to open. And then your person starts having clarity in his life. So again, money, sex, and food all affect the way you think. And they could lead you to brain fog. So if a person's trying to do it chemically and it's not working, try to hit it's time to go through the soul level. All right? That's today's class.
Yeah,